Welcome, beautiful people, to Petrify the Patriarchy. I'm your guide, Joe B. If you're ready to unearth the subtle ways patriarchal culture has shaped your world and uncover the hidden power within your own shadow, you're in the right place. Here we don't just speak truth to power, we wield it, turning stagnant energies to stone so that your authentic, liberated self can truly flourish. Let the unlearning begin. All right, welcome everyone back to another episode of Petrify the Patriarchy. I'm Joe B, your guide. Today we're going to talk about the power of ritual or routine or sacredness, or there are lots of different ways to think about it. And I'm going to come at you from the angle of a recovering Catholic, number one, and number two, I'm coming at you through a pretty spiritual lens this evening, as I had a shamanic journey earlier today that really spoke to me about this particular episode. I've been struggling with this episode for the better part of, I think, 3 weeks. I've been stuck on exactly how to move forward with the importance of ritual in our everyday lives, and thankfully in my journey I got the answer. So I'm going to try to be succinct about it, and the messages that come through for me don't always they're not always super clear. So I might be a little wibbly wobbly, if that's even a word, to talk about exactly what I mean when I talk ritual. So yeah, let's get to this, right? Like, if you're anything like me, and there's any hint of something that can feel religious, particularly Eurocentric Christianity religious, it causes a big ick factor for me. I know plenty of spiritual folks who also practice a traditional, mainstream religion, and I'm by no means in any way, shape, or form anti-religion. If that's your jam, awesome. I have walked away from it because I'll get into kind of the details and nuances here, I hope, at least to some degree. But because of the hypocrisy I saw growing up in the Catholic Church, I have distanced myself pretty much from the time that I could remember. So yeah, so for the longest time, as an adult, wading through this kind of, what kind of spiritual are you question, anytime the word sacred popped up, I would kind of cringe, again, because of my Catholicism in my upbringing. And I've had to come to a place where I redefine what words like ritual and sacred are to myself in order to remove that ick factor, in order to extricate from traditional Eurocentric religion, right? So now I look at ritual as a very personal need. They're the routines and maybe the tools that I use in those routines that are associated with how I go about those things to stay in alignment with my soul. And that has a very lovely feeling to me, versus thinking about what sacred means on a hard pew in church on Sunday. So here's how I define the word ritual. So any mundane task or routine turned colorful or magical in order to give it more meaning for the things that have to be done in support of manifestation. And for the word sacred, I say looking at times or settings that I create around something I need. So whatever that space looks like, whatever that one thing you do for yourself is, for me, it's drinking tea and blending tea. I love creating teas and different flavor combinations. I should make a tea called Petrify the Patriarchy. When I do that. Okay. Side note. Whether that's your sacred space for meditation, or maybe you light candles and think about intentions, right? I look at those times in those spaces as a very innate need for myself. And so sacred is a word I might use when talking about how I might try to alter my own internal belief systems and inner monologues. It's my personal development or growth, but it's very intentional, quiet, sacred time that I set aside for me. Okay? So those two things, having pulled them outside of my understanding of, sacred and ritual through Catholicism, are very, very different. They're based in a soul need, a soul purpose for me, right? And since the whole point of the entirety of this podcast is around unlearning patriarchal beliefs, we're going to focus on following rituals that have meaning to us, and how you might specifically use ritual in order to remove guilt, in order to remove shame, in order to give yourself a voice into new realms of your own divine feminine. And here's where it gets real, right? The hypocrisy I saw growing up in the Catholic Church, I saw right away. I remember being probably 5 years old and arguing with my parents about why we had to wake up early on a Sunday to go sit inside a pretty ugly building to do this thing called praying, when the way that they talk about God being everywhere, why couldn't I just sit in my pretty backyard and pray? Or why couldn't I stay in my room and pray around, my safe spaces with my fun toys and my, right? Like, I remember arguing that fact very, very, very young. And I also remember seeing all these so-called friends, again, you're talking 4 or 5 years old, right? Like, tiny kid, where we go to church, and my parents were very good at following what scripture said, or what was preached about, in the sermon, and then would talk about how we could better our day-to-day existence through those words, right? But and in the real outside world, my friends who were also Catholic, who are also listening to the same sermons, I did not see them practicing Christianity in the way that I was being taught Christianity. And that also led to this argument that I had with my folks as a very young kid. Why do I have to go sit in this building? And when I turned 16 and got my driver's license, I remember finding out what mass my parents were going to go to, and then I would purposefully go to a different mass, and I would just drive the car to the parking lot, and I'd take a book with me, and I'd sit in the parking lot and read, and then I'd wait for the first few people to exit, and then I'd take off and go home. So for 2 years, that I was given the choice of, you can go to youth group on Wednesdays for, I think it was an hour and a half, or you could go to church for an hour on the weekend. I chose to go to church for an hour on the weekend, and I knew I'd be able to just sit in the parking lot and read a book and not go in. And so that's for 2 years, that's how I spent my church time. And then the week I turned 18, was, the last time I was going to church. So my mom decided to accompany me, and there was no getting out of it. And I remember, like, I was in mourning because it had been 2 years since I'd set foot in a church, and I wore all black, and I walked in. I sat in the very back, right next to the door. So as soon as we could, I would be jetting out of there. There's like, I'm not sticking around to say goodbye to anybody. I'm just leaving. And so, I think my mom felt some sort of pride in, oh, it's her last church, attendance, and she's an adult making her own decisions now. I'd been making those decisions for 2 years and they just didn't know it. Or maybe they did and they never said anything. I don't know. But I struggled my entire young life with the hypocrisy that I saw on the day-to-day. And so I do, and I'll be honest, I have a real bias against Eurocentric Christian religions for that particular purpose. And then, politically speaking now too, where we're seeing such disdain for anybody other than white, wealthy. You've heard me say it before, right? And so that bias sat really heavily with me. And so again, anytime I heard the word sacred or ritual, it automatically connected to this space that caused me a lot of discomfort, caused me to feel outside myself, that caused me to constantly feel wrong about everything. Constantly questioned myself in any regard to being in church. And so later in life, as I start to dive more into spirituality and better understand things through a more natural viewpoint, and by natural I mean nature, right? I think nature is wondrous, and we've got so much to learn from her. And when I hit my career job, my 40-hour work week, that's when I got really good at creating intentional time, because it was limited, right? I would be at work all day. And as an educator, if you are an educator, your day is not an 8-hour day. Your day is more like 10, 12, maybe, especially if you're just beginning, right? You do not have an 8-hour work day. And so any free time that I had, I got really, really good at having sacred routines. And I had a whole system. Before I left the house, I knew exactly how I was going about my morning. And I took my time. I'm so slow in the morning, especially the earlier I have to wake up. And being a teacher, that's generally pretty freaking early. So my alarm would go off at 5:30, and generally didn't have to leave the house until 7:30. So I gave myself 2 hours to wake up, go through my routine to make sure I felt totally and completely put together, which aided in confidence, and it aided in my expression of self, and it allowed me to be able to start working through my day in my head and having conversations that I needed to revisit with scholars. And I had a whole system. And so by the time I shut that door, locked it, and hopped in my car, my day was mapped out. It was planned, and I felt good, right? And in the evenings when I got home, I had my fun time. And that was anytime I was doing anything spell work related or intention setting, or any kind of creativity using or utilizing any kind of idea of manifestation. Those times were mapped out in the evenings after some of the standard stuff got taken care of. But generally speaking, all the self-care around bath and washing my hair and my skincare, and then eased into my bedroom, which is my sacred space, right? Where I would really focus on bettering myself in one way, shape, or form. And I had and at work even, I had a very strict, and I did call it sacred routine, every day that I did with my scholars, every day. And I did not deviate from that, because the second we deviated from that 30-minute of warming our brains up, preparing ourselves to learn, spending time in community, sharing how we're feeling, just getting our day ready mentally, physically, spiritually, however you want to look at it. I didn't look at it as a spiritual thing, but I knew if I didn't take that time, the rest of the day was going to be me constantly running to deal with all the fires that got lit because I didn't find a way to put them out before we even began our day. So everything I did as an educator was intentional, because I wanted time at school to be just as fun for me as for the scholars that were in my care. So I had a very sacred thing going on with my kids, and we sang and we we danced, and we had these fun little puzzles that we did. We had some quiet downtime, and then we would get ramped up, and then the learning would commence. Like, we had this whole dance that we did, and it was beautiful. And I never changed it. Even if we had a weather-related delay, or if there was some sort of something that disrupted our routine, like a special event, an assembly or picture day, for example, I made absolutely sure that we still had that time as soon as we could. Because if we didn't, like I said, I'd spend the day chasing after everything that I could have dealt with in that first 30 minutes of having that time and setting the stage, right? I remember those days explicitly, where I had pounding headaches and elevated blood pressure, and I vowed I will make time and space for this always, because I don't need to have health issues, because I know what works. And since leaving my career in education, I've struggled so hard to maintain my own rituals. And even this morning, instead of doing any of the work I know I need to do or should be doing, I got up because foster puppies were barking. I don't want to clean up a mess, so I let the dogs out and gave them a handful of kibble just to tide them over for a little while, and I climbed right back into bed. I didn't go back to sleep, even though at this stage of my life I'm fighting this really weird journey of perimenopausal bullshit. I'm hypothyroid, I have Hashimoto's. It's a weird, like, DNA level exhaustion that I can't shake. It's always there. And I just got in bed and I just laid there listening to some ASMR, hoping I could get another hour of sleep. I tossed and turned, and I closed my eyes and felt like I was drifting off, and then I'd have a thought that would snap me out of it. And I finally was like, fuck it. I just tossed the covers off. I'm super irritated because I'm not doing for myself what I know I need to do. It makes me feel better, starts my day well, gives me a sense of purpose, and motivates me, right? So now I'm irritated. But in that irritation, I also recognize the resistance that I have to attempting my rituals the way that I used to when I had a job to go to. And it was so easy for me to create those rituals and those sacred moments because, in essence, I was being paid to do them. Well, I mean, at least during my workday, right? That sacred space for the 30 minutes when, right, we're setting the intentions of the day. I did them at home also to decompress after dealing with all the stressors of work, especially because I work in a system, a very broken system, the education system, and scholars who need all kinds of supports, and the extra demands on educators, and all that extra time that gets eaten up because educators are expected to work for free, and parents and admin and all of those things that I wanted to escape from. And I knew from the moment I was hired as an educator, I had this feeling. I had this thought pop into my head, well, this is my life now. That's not exactly a positive thought, because now I'm like, I'm on a schedule. I have to stick to the schedule I've always known, which is I have to wait until summer to have any free time. And, like all of these thoughts that are not necessarily very positive. And now that I'm not working for anyone, I'm not getting paid necessarily to get up and go somewhere and give my time to a system or an organization. I cannot seem to find the value in caring for myself. And it's so counterintuitive and also so fucking patriarchal. It's a characteristic we're going to be talking about very soon in regard to worth and value, right? I love my sacred rituals. And in theory, have all the time in the world to do them now. I could spend my entire day doing them, and I love doing them. But I don't, because I'm discovering that my own internal worth and value have always been tied to outside sources, and this is a characteristic of patriarchal culture. It doesn't come from my own intrinsic sense of self-love or safety or care. Everything that I've always done has always been for someone else, for an organization, for my child, for my ex-husband, for you name it. And if you're a woman out there, you know what I'm talking about. Your self-care is so easy to just dismiss, right? And patriarchy depends on us doing this. It is the gaslighting of all gaslights. Patriarchy needs us to forget who we are. And I had to remember this, and this is how my journey helped me today, right? So witches, pagans, natural healers have all been demonized throughout history, mostly because they don't follow the crowd. And particularly when you think about Eurocentric Christian religions, specifically in England, right? Women are persecuted for not wanting to follow this new thing called Christianity and stick to what they know, which is nature, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the sun, the cycles of the season, our own cycles in terms of our 28-day menstrual cycle, right? We're expected to suddenly stop practicing things that women had done for, and healers, not necessarily just women, but healers themselves had done for millennia. And all that knowledge, all of that collective wisdom is suddenly supposed to be erased because religion, right? This is the system doing what it's supposed to do. It's designed to keep us all down. Women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, disabled, and any intersectionality in between. If we don't fall into what biblical studies and laws that are modeled off of Eurocentric Christianity, the system is not going to support us. And in the United States, we're seeing this right now with women's rights being revoked, right? We're standing on thousands and thousands of years of patriarchy ancestry. It's deeply embedded in our psyche now. Thousands and thousands of years of men in power, whether that's Christian power, whether that's monarch power, whether that's legal or wealth power, telling the rest of us how and what is acceptable. And only if it's acceptable to them, putting money in their pockets, creating more worth, more wealth, more power for them. So now we're seeing this, right? This is the forced legislation on our bodies. Where is that for men? If women are forced to carry a baby due to any number of rape or incest, let's say, abusive situations, and or their body is physically unable to hold that baby for whatever medical reason may happen, or if it's your choice because you're just not ready yet. It was a legitimate accident. Why aren't we legislating men and their penis? Why don't we make it illegal for them to raw dog it? Why don't we automatically make them have to cover half of every cost from the time of conception? Okay? Like, where is that for men? It's not there because that demand has never been placed on them and is likely to never be placed on them, right? But it's always been placed on us. We're somehow at fault if the pregnancy doesn't last. We're somehow at fault if we get pregnant to begin with, even though that was never our intention, right? Shit happens. Right now we're also seeing the taking away financial protections for women, right? But where is that for men? Where is it that, if you have ever been found guilty of domestic violence, that you are no longer able to, let's say apply for credit. You have to wait like a bankruptcy. You have to wait 7 years for that to be off your record, right? Where is it that financial protections are taken away from men? They aren't. We don't see that because that demand has never been made of men, but it's been made of women, right? The idea of disallowing divorce, right? We know, statistics show, that marriage benefits men. It doesn't benefit women. And because we're seeing these rights being stripped, that means that for the safety of our own personal beings, we're going to be forced into marriages, not unlike our grandmothers and great-grandmothers, because they needed to live with this abusive, drunk asshole because the bills got paid. Not because we liked him, not because it was a good match. We had to put up with his abusive ass, right? So that, those sorts of things put us in positions where we have to be expected to put up with abuse, right? To force us to carry children, keep us financially dependent, right? Keep us miserable and distracted. Why? Because they know we're so fucking powerful. We've already proven it. Women have proven, statistically speaking, that we live longer, healthier, happier lives without marriage. To men. I'll add that caveat, without marriage to men, right? We're doing better financially on our own because we're not being forced to have children. We have to wake up and we have to own how powerful we are. I think we're seeing the cusp of this happening. It's all over my social feeds, right? I'm seeing all these women speaking up and doing amazingly beautiful work on TikTok and Facebook and Insta and all the places. We have to wake up and own our power. And we have to step out united as women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, disabled, all of the intersections, right? All of us who are marginalized, we have to be together on this. Stand arm in arm because we outnumber them. And they know that. And they're scared of that, which is why these laws and social customs exist. It's the internalized bullshit that we don't even necessarily know that we're participating in, right? That typical normal day-to-day is actually not beneficial to us. And how do I know that? Because anytime my gut tenses up, or the hair on the back of my neck stands up, or anytime I feel numb or uninspired, I know that is patriarchy doing exactly what it's designed to do. it's designed to kill me slowly because I'm supposed to ignore my intuitive signs. I'm supposed to not know myself. I'm supposed to question everything about me. But by knowing myself, if we know each other, again, as women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, disabled, if we know each other, we all stand in solidarity together. We stand in revolution. I've been waiting for revolution. I've been called revolutionary because of how I choose to use my voice, which is dominant culture in white America. I can create my own revolution, which is a part of what I'm doing here. And I didn't really even think about that, again, until I had this shamanic journey today. I am revolution. Revolution is me. That is my new mantra. Those are the exact words that came to me. I am revolution. Revolution is me. Standing here with you, with all of you, in solidarity, and knowing that we can do this together. We can do it silently. Data suggests that women are leaving typical forms of worship for witchcraft and paganism at enormous rates right now. Because we are beginning to wake up and understand that religion, by and large, was created to control women specifically. If we're all independently working to dismantle what they, air quotes, what they want to remove from us, in which to force control, when we can meet each other in community, make a minor mention of something, and suddenly all exactly know what we mean, we stand with you. It's all very Handmaid's Tale, unfortunately, but we're starting to wake up. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it happen. So back to rituals. Rituals specific to self-love, self-safety, before anything else, are going to be key in this battle. And I say battle intentionally. It is a battle. It is a battle for our rights, a right to exist, a right to be free, a right to be liberated, a right to exist as a human. Plain and simple. The more we love ourselves, the less we will want what they say they offer us, which in reality, having been married and divorced now, I will never do that again. Offered the moon, nowhere near that. There's no right or wrong way to create any kind of self-love ritual. For me, it's all about setting intentions. It's finding that nuanced aspect of self-love that I want to focus on. Knowing that I want that or that I need that, and give myself time. It can be 30 seconds. Maybe it's more grand than that. Maybe it's, 30 minutes of me in my sacred space with my candles, with words that I've written that I want to speak into existence, right? But give yourself that time to envision it, picture it in your head, and feel it with your body. Pro tip here, emotion wheel, as someone who patriarchy has really harmed in terms of not knowing what I need or what I'm feeling, right? Because women are so emotional. I've learned to turn off my emotions and can be very academic. And so for me, in my midlife, learning to turn that on has been highly unsettling for me. Learning to speak my needs into existence, learning to address my wants and desires, and putting words to my emotions, right? That's really unsettling for me. But finding an emotions wheel and or a needs wheel has been hugely instrumental for me. to be able to nuance out exactly what it is that I want or need. So picture it, feel it, and then stick with that picture and feeling as long as you can. Let's manifest petrifying the patriarchy as a collective of revolutionary, underground badasses. Because if we're all doing it independently, you know we're doing it as a collective. And it might not necessarily be in a place of worship where a lot of people are seen doing the quote-unquote right thing. Does that make what we're doing any less right? No, we're just not doing it in traditional Eurocentric Christian fashion. So I'm standing here for accountability tonight, that I'm starting my sacred rituals up again tomorrow morning, no matter what. I don't care how tired I am. I don't care. I'm doing it. I am revolution. Revolution is me. My rituals are what makes me better, period. So I'm intentionally taking that time back. I'm not just going to let it fly away like I have been. I'm going to build that ritual schedule I know I need for my own sense of love and safety. That also will support my need to disrupt the system, which is my sole purpose in life, and make the world a better place through the revolutionary self-love, and therefore translates to global revolutionary as a human collective. So, ritual. Sacred space. It's important to give that to yourself. Be a revolutionary. Do it. I'm Joe B. I'm going to sign off for tonight. Talked way longer than I thought I was going to. Maybe eventually we'll get to some specific rituals that I've done, but I think the most important thing is just talking about the importance of having those rituals and speaking to your self-love, speaking to your needs and your wants. First and foremost, period. Once you've got you down, watch out, world. Can you imagine all of us together in our powerful states? How scary we'd be. Let's think about taking over the world in a better way. All right, my lovelies. Until next time, bye.